Hi, this is Hawkwind from DraftKings Discord, and today I really want to go over how to pick fighters for DraftKings Reignmakers UFC. A lot of people are coming over from Reignmakers NFL and have not done UFC or even know much about UFC to nothing. And I thought one of the things I hear all the time are the NFL people saying, "Where do I begin?" I also hear from new people, probably from the ecosystem in general of DraftKings, coming in and saying, "Hey, I've done UFC, but how do I do the Reignmakers?" So I thought I would do a slideshow on how to actually research the fighters, which I think is one of the biggest keys to success. So experienced gamblers, experienced DFS, UFC people, experienced people within Reignmakers probably already have their own system and process. This is for people getting into it or wanting to dip their toes in more. And this is really just insight into what I do. But I think you'll be able to take something away from it to quite a bit to be able to help you get into UFC Reignmakers a lot more. So let's talk about the keys to success under research. So what I would suggest is you create a process. You tweak it a little bit based on your outcomes, and then you get a process so that every time there's an event for UFC where we actually have a new card lineup where you need to figure out fighters from your NFT cards, that you follow the same process so it's not so time consuming. That's one of the other things I hear about as being negative, which is it's so time consuming. There's 440, 500 fighters on UFC cards overall for the year. So how can I pick them? Well, I think the best way to do it is to do something like this, a process. So I did it in order of what I think is most important. So let's go over it. We're going to go into more detail on each of these different points, but I want to go over real quickly. Watch previous fights of fighters. That's a huge one.
Hawkwind,
you get to see.
Hawkwind, this is Discord user Slappy White. I just want to ask you when you're getting into this, so folks know before you get into the details, how much time commitment are they looking at? And you're about to tell us what kind of time management we need, but just give us an estimate. How much time does this require?
So it requires it in a couple different stages. So you can figure out how much time you spend, and I'll give you an average. First, there's acquiring the NFTs. You can open packs, or you can buy off the secondary market, or both. So in that case, you can open packs and you will get 5 fighters, although it might be duplicate, and each of the contests requires 5 unique fighters. So you could go all the way down to opening and then buying some cards in the secondary, or just buying in the secondary. That might take you a total of 20 minutes upwards. Then you actually set your lineups. Depending on what your process is, if you just go by Vegas odds, you literally just Google it, bookmark Vegas odds on a site that you like, and then just pick the ones that have the highest odds as favorites. And that might take you then to actually go into Reignmakers to set up your lineups and submit them. Geez, for 5 teams, it might take you 20 minutes again. So that's the very low end. Usually I have 14 different entries for the event coming up tomorrow. And on that one, I probably spent 45 minutes getting the fighters, both from packs and buying in the secondary total, but I've probably spent another 4 hours researching plus, and then entering, and then changing as I enter, because the next day I find out more information or think about it more or see more analysis. And so I probably spent another 2 hours just inputting and changing over the week.
And Hawkwind,
so,
before you get back to your slide, and I appreciate your time. For the average fantasy football player or team owner, how would you compare how much time they're going to spend on a UFC fight team versus what they do with their fantasy football team?
It's a great question. You're going to spend more time researching for UFC. There's just no question. There's just so many fighters, and they fight 2 to 3 times a year, sometimes once. Football players, you actually have playing for 18, 17 total weeks plus whatever playoffs. And you have 18 weeks of football. So you're going to know the football players and their positions much better. There's a lot of research in that. But I would say UFC 2 to 3 times more. All right, let's get into it. So we talked about the process to establish. As you can see, watching previous fights has got to be the most important. It takes time though, and you have to have some services, which I'll get into, to be able to make that happen. So not everyone wants to or can watch previous fights, but you find out so much information. Like this guy has no defense at all on his feet because his hands are down by his hips. And you're like, geez, there's no way I want to take that chance by picking him. It's a very simplified one, but you really see a lot when you actually look at the previous fights. The next one is what a lot of people do. Go to large free MMA sites for predictions and analysis, both in articles and drop downs. And I'll show you a few of those in a second. Paid MMA sites. This is the big one. I use this the most, actually. It requires like $5 to $10 a month on average. And then they do a lot of essentially gated videos and information and picks and articles for those that have the subscription. And these people are full-time UFC gamblers or full-time UFC gamblers, NFL usually, and NBA. And my God, the information they provide is phenomenal. Then there's YouTube videos on predictions and analysis. I use this when I actually travel to work and just put it on the radio. Discords are huge. And there's a bunch of the big MMA sites actually also have their own free Discords. I would suggest looking at those. Twitter, it's actually huge. News feeds are huge. Joe Blow just had in practice his head torn apart, and he now has a big cut. Not sure if he's going to actually make it into the weekend fight. That's a huge piece of news. Or this gentleman's fighter's dad just died. That's a big one also, and it's happened in the past. So having access and set up for those Twitter news feeds that flash are really important. I personally get it from the paid site. And then key stats and stat predictors. You can go to various sites for that, and I'll show you some examples. And then create a spreadsheet for your notes, who you pick as it changes. The reality is, as you do more and more research, you'll do it throughout the week. And so you'll actually change your mind a little bit from here to there. So you want to be able to actually show that, be able to reference that, and take a look at what you actually think is the best and why. So let's get into the watch previous fighters. There's three ways that I see it. There's UFC Fight Pass, which is made by UFC. And that's $10 a month. That one has a pretty bad UI that you go around. But it actually has fighter playlists, which I love. So I type in a person's name, and it'll actually then pull up 8 different fights that they had, both in the minor circuits that UFC is affiliated with, like LFA, to the UFC fights. Doesn't have everyone's fight, but geez, it has quite a bit. So that is $10 a month or $100 a year. So I do use that. I use that along with ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus has a better UI, just has more limited of the background, older fights, and they don't have playlists. So I enjoy going there. But they do have, the other reason why you would have ESPN Plus is actually they show a lot of the fight night events and then also some of the prelim stuff exclusively on ESPN Plus. So you might have it anyway. So that's where you get unrivaled UFC access. And that's also where you would buy your pay-per-view to have at home. You'd have to go through there. All right. And then finally, you're actually going to see YouTube videos of past fights. Sometimes they're uploaded not with permission, so aren't really legal, and that get taken down. Sometimes they'll do inserts and they'll do proper notations, so they're allowed up. UFC also has its own YouTube site, so I recommend going there. They do more snippets, but here it is, 14 million, almost 15 million subscribers. I personally subscribe to these on my phone. So you can get in here and take a look at all the different ones and then quickly get to it if you are subscribed. I also actually have other subscriptions to other YouTube ones and a variety of different places, like Bleed MMA, I think is a really good a good YouTube one to also.
And Hawkwind, if folks are looking for maybe 2 recommendations of the great information you've given, what would be the top 2 places to really look for information?
So the top two, honestly, the top two overall, I'm going to show in the next two slideshows. But when it comes to seeing fighters fights, you got the two paid ones and you got the free one that you can search in YouTube. The only thing I'll mention on the YouTube one is actually you want to do sort by upload date. That's what I've noticed to be the best when you go into filters. And then it'll usually do the most current upcoming event. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of old event information. So we'll get to, actually right now, we'll get to the next one that shows you the favorite sites. So this is a big one. They have articles, they have predictions, they have community predictions. They have so many different things. And there's a bunch of large sites. There's probably about 10 to 12 big ones. I'm showing you mine. Other people have others' favorites. First, UFC.com. You can never go wrong with that. A lot of times you'll find fighter insights and fighter information. It doesn't really go into predictions. We'll do Vegas odds also, I think. But really what you get to see here too is not just your main event preview, but it'll also have actually confirmed fighter matches for upcoming UFC events. And that'll allow you to get a jump on being able to buy some of those cards on the secondary because you know they're going to fight. So in Tapology, which is one of the bigger sites that people love, it's been around a long time. You're going to see a lot of predictions in here. You're going to see feeds of news. There's quite a bit of articles. It's kind of a one-stop shop. A lot of people use statistics from here also. Another one that I personally have used now, for 15 years probably, which is quite a long time since this UFC has been around only 30, is SureDog. You have everything from fight odds, which is very good, and it's up at a main tab with predictions and so on. Another kind of one-stop shop. They also do boxing. Next is MMA Junkie. This is one that's, I think, gotten better and better. So you want to take a look at this, and we'll tell you about future events coming up, some articles. Again, very similar. This is actually either affiliated or owned by USA Today. So they have been getting more money into it. And then you have MMA Mania. I've been using this more often. Wow. So the picture that you're seeing right here is actually Diego Sanchez, who's been around, 20 years probably. I saw him on Tough, the Ultimate Fighter, way back when he was in the house. He got cut off of the stable of UFC fighters, and he went into bare knuckles fight, and that's actually the outcome of just using your bare knuckles. I did not see that before. Same with this site. I think it's more of an up-and-coming one. And SB Nation, which is pretty famous for lots of sports, from NFL to NBA. To NHL and so on. They have a lot of fantasy connections. So I think you're going to see this do better and better. And then many, many more. So that's the large free sites. And we'll get into how each of them have a free Twitter, usually you can connect to, and also a Discord. Next up is the paid MMA prediction in analyst sites. Honestly, this is where I get by far my most value. But it costs money. I don't want to keep throwing money stuff. As a quick aside, just so you're aware, I'm not affiliated with any pay site. I get no money whatsoever for anything that I do. It's all voluntary. And things that I'm actually suggesting are just what I use and I think are good. I don't get paid for any of this stuff. So there's no real reason other than I think that they're wonderful. So we want picks. This is the main one I use. I actually would love it if no one else uses it, because then the information would just be for me. But to be fair, this is a really good one. It's $10 a month. They actually do a ton of videos, very easy predictions. Let me sign in. Hopefully it won't show it. Yep. Hawkwind. Logging in right now. And this is now behind the paywall, essentially. And you'll see up here, you have quick picks. You won't see this in the free area. They do have a bunch of free stuff that you can take a look at also. Here, they have two main guys that talk about, Angelo and Jacob. My favorite is Angelo. Jacob's good and provides humor, but I like Angelo's picks. He's more conservative. So you can see quick picks, but what I really like are things like the raw notes. This is Angelo's raw notes. And if you look down, you can actually see, I'm clicking on the raw notes, and this shows you some insight, is You actually see Daniel Marcos versus Oliveira. You see what the person thinks broken down, and then you see a breakdown of each fighter. And that's based on their past fights, just from the recent one on backwards to even ones that were on different circuits in other countries you don't find a lot of information about. These guys are professionals. They do this full time. And they also actually just do tons of looking at past fights, tapes as they call them. And so these guys have done the most important thing, looking at tapes and then doing their analysis and then putting into proven, in their minds, proven, statistically proven models that they run. And there's quite a bit in the paid side. They also have really good paid videos. They also have extremely good videos that are actually free. So $10 a month for premium. Also a free Discord you could join without paying the premium. And I love their YouTube videos. So I would highly recommend you go to We Want Picks YouTube.
Hawkwin, how long, you mentioned how long you've been following UFC. How long you've been subscribing to this service? And did you notice a difference between before and after?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've only done these guys for about 3 weeks. I had multiple other services that I paid one at a time, but I moved from one to other since back in November. I can tell you that We Want Picks, for instance, is phenomenally good, helped me a lot, and also gets me thinking where to do additional analysis somewhere else. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I never thought of that before, so I go somewhere else. How much has it helped? It helps a lot. I would be somewhat not lost without it, but I wouldn't be as well informed. It's just so worth it if you're doing DFS, UFC, and especially Reignmakers DFC. The next one actually is DFC by the numbers, and they do a free download, spreadsheet download, which you can then use as a basis for each event. And they have articles. They have optimizers. And by the way, so does the other one. It's an optimizer for DFS. And I'll show you what, I think it's still linked. I'm going to have to log in first. So DFS by the numbers actually does both articles, live stream, YouTube thoughts, and optimizers for DMS. That's where it helps you to do downloadable or uploadable different types of picks for the DFS on DraftKings. It also has the spreadsheet model, which I want to show you real quick. What you can do with this is actually go into using this as a basis for your notes, and it has a lot of statistics actually. This is only through their paid site, and you can see this will tell you their age, height, all these statistics, but striking stats in detail. The grappling statistics. Hold on one second. I want to be able to show you more here. As you scroll over, fighter odds, all this different things, and then there's tabs down below, what they think you should target, lineup projections, lineup percentages in DFS. So quite a bit of information, well worth it at $5. And you also can use this sheet yourself for lots of different note taking. There's other ones that people like that actually are paid ones. I've tried a bunch of them that are free. These are the ones I found that I like the most. It would be great if others could comment on different other paid sites that they think is really good. And sorry, it says research your own and trail some more. That's trial some. A lot of them have free. So this is one of the key things for me personally. Next is YouTube. We mentioned some of the YouTube stuff. I want to mention for fighters, but there's a lot of good information. I mentioned earlier, We Want Picks. This is free. They do have a few videos that are under paid, but most of them are free. This is what I recommend. Subscribe to this. Take a look. They have even sometimes breakdowns of every single one. If you go to their video, go to their playlists, and they actually have playlists of each breakdown of every fight that itself individually. And you can see where these playlists are. Really, really convenient to string them along. Another one is Bleed MMA. I mentioned that earlier. I'd subscribe to Bleed MMA, and they have a lot of good content, predictions, full cards, individual, more in-depth fights are bouts that they have between, like, this is the past one, which was Strickland Imavov, which really was good. Strickland won that, by the way. Monk MMA Addicts. I didn't say that right. The play on words. They did a really good job. Someone in the Discord for DraftKings actually mentioned this, and my God, I love it. But my favorite by far is actually the paid site. The paid site, which is We Want Picks. So on the We Want Picks, again, that's the site where I pay $10 a month and absolutely love. They actually have on their Discord an area where they actually do all the different important tweets from UFC news. So it could be a variety of different places, as you can see here. They also have their own tweets where it's like, hey, we're doing something a little different. Also, when they post new videos that I mentioned. But the news is really important because this is where I found out someone didn't make weight. Another one where someone got injured. Another one where hey, this fighter's been confirmed on the next card. Then I go into the marketplace and try to buy some at the cheap price right away. This is essentially a consolidated area for all the Twitter type stuff that I feel is really important to be able to play the Reignmakers UFC. So again, this is, I'm pretty sure, free as long as you join their Discord, which is also free. I'd say this is one of the best things that I actually get for research because it's so hard to keep on top of all the news. So that's kind of some ideas behind the Twitter for breaking news. Let me go ahead and go to key stats. What I think is really important to understand and know. In regards to key stats, I think that it's really important for a few different things to understand and research. One is the fight stats. It's really simple. This is for newer people, just getting in for the first time or just doing a little bit more than dipping their toes in. Understand what the scoring rules are. It's really important because you can research those stats around what the scoring is based on. So if we take a look, it's right here in the UFC, in DraftKings Nation, which they produce themselves, which are articles. You can see right here what the points are: strikes, significant strikes, control time, takedown, and so on. And then your bonuses that you get. Let me make this somewhat simple because this is another question that gets asked a lot, which is like, how much do you need to place? So you're going to need there's 5 people in a fight. Usually if you win, you're going to get hopefully over 100 points. So that's if you pick 5 winners out of 5 slots in one entry, you're going to get a little over 500 points. You need about 600 around there to actually win everything in that contest. It depends on the night, of course. And usually to place, you need around like 540. So you need to usually pick every one and also get some of the extra bonuses included. I have seen people place, though, with getting one wrong where that fighter still did enough time and went to decision. They got enough points in this area. So familiarize yourself with this information, figure out what it means, and then you can look at stats based on that. Then you have different sites. UFC Stats, it's a free one. You can go over here and take a look. You click on fighters and you can go and search by anyone's name. So let's take a look at McKinney, who's fighting in this upcoming one. Let's see if I can pull him up. And there it is, Terrence McKinney. So I click on his name and you can actually get his past fights and also what the event was, method of decision, round time. So this gives you some general information. If I actually click into the bout that he fought in, you can see who he fought with more information. And you can see it all the way down here per round and so on. So this is quite a bit of stats, but it's good for you as you go on to be able to tie that into the scoring, to be able to kind of make your own model. Also, there are sites that actually have predictor stats. We went over DFS by the numbers. It's downloadable sheets, $5 a month. And that's that spreadsheet I showed you. And then articles. There's definitely articles that talk about betting trends. I'll give you one that's really, really interesting. I mentioned earlier a trend where 66% of all the favorites in all the UFC events in 2022 won. Here's some other really interesting stats based off an article. So UFC favorites betting trends. They have some information on there. Overall underdogs, what the record is on UFC events, broken down by what their odds were favorite. Notice if an underdog is plus 250 or more, they barely win. Very interesting. I think those were for pay-per-views overall. How to bet underdogs conclusions. So these are different articles. I just wanted to show you one. And then here's another good one as an example. 8 UFC stats that'll win you money. This one's good. UFC gambling for dummies. So if you have the superior striking stats, which is part of the scoring system for the DraftKings Reignmakers, you win 72% of the time. That's huge. Going with chalk means the favorite fighter or the very popular one. Picking against overweight fighters that miss their cut or are actually much heavier and trying to go down in weight. Late replacements, and so on and so forth. This just helps you overall to understand general trends. So do a lot of research on that kind of stuff, and then just save those articles, for instance, and the sites that you might use for stats. Spreadsheet. I make my own spreadsheet. I mentioned that downloadable one from that $5 service. Simple place where you can put your stats and info that you gather and research, and where you can add your own notes. Create a template for every event, create a tab at the bottom for each of them. So you can actually see over time what that information is, how you did. You can go back and take a look, read your notes, essentially really dial in how you do your own predicting for each of the fighters and each of the events. Some sample key components or columns in the spreadsheet could be fighters' names, the Vegas odds, their records, key stats, style of fighter. Something I didn't go over, which is really important. You might get someone who's phenomenally good at grappling and takedowns against someone who is a boxer that has terrible standing takedown defense. That could change the whole dynamic. Essentially, UFC set up the fight for the person with the grappling and takedown to win, and they pitted them against someone who's terrible at takedown defense. That's important. Because a lot of times they'll showcase a fighter or give a fighter who's up and coming or popular about that they should win, showcasing them. And that's how they do it legally, is by setting up the fighter that is not a good matchup for them. Fantasy notes by average and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the predictor spreadsheet that you can keep over time. Examples of spreadsheets. Here's mine actually. Did all those stats from that $5 site. Down here, I actually did the names, odds. I didn't fill this out. I did fill it out, but when I recorded this, I hadn't had it filled out. I even have the pictures of the gentleman so I can remember, along with their key stats. Took that from another site. Business Jeremy's, I mentioned earlier, has our own downloadable template that's linked. And he has a simplified, which I think is really great. And so he has this available for everyone. It's right here, linkable. And that's it for the kind of the stats of the spreadsheet. Research is one of the most important parts of choosing a lineup of fighters to be able to both place for money in Reignmakers UFC contests and to win Reignmakers UFC contests. Again, most people, if they're dipping their toes in, might just go by Vegas odds. Well, guess what? 33% of all of the matches in 2022 were by underdogs. So if you go by Vegas odds, you might pick the 5 that are really high up there and will win. But at some point, you're not going to win. You won't win if you just go by Vegas odds. You just won't. Someone at a lower card that's a toss-up or pick 'em, equal odds, or an underdog will get more points for the night. You might be able to go safe with just the Vegas odds, but this research is going to help you so much more. Best thing I can tell you is figure out your own process. and slowly add to it if you get more deeply involved, or keep it simple and use that for each of your contests. So for Radish NFT and for myself, Hawkwind, I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to post this up so you have all these links that you can just click yourself to go into, and hopefully you can use it as a reference guide for the future. Thank you very much. Bye.